Dear students, I welcome you all in the class on analog and digital communication. In yesterday's class, we talked about the concept of pulse modulation. We discussed various forms of pulse modulation in which we talked about pulse amplitude modulation in detail. We had seen the various forms of pulse amplitude modulation, which included natural sampling and flat top sampling. We had also seen the circuitry for PWM modulator, and we had discussed various mathematical expressions also related to pulse amplitude modulation. So in today's class, first we will discuss the demodulation of PM signal, and then we will move to the next form of pulse modulation, that is your pulse width modulation. So let us start. So yesterday, as I told you, we talked about PAM modulator. So today we will discuss PAM demodulator. So if you remember in yesterday's class, I had told you that when we use flat topped sampling, we introduced deliberate distortion into the original signal. Okay, I told you that the original PAM signal means the top of the pulse, it should have the same wave shape as we have in the modulating signal. But what we do, instead of having the same shape as modulating signal of the pulse stop, we make the pulse stop flat. Okay, we provide it a constant value. That's what we call flat top sampling. So we are introducing a deliberate distortion into it. So obviously when we introduce deliberate distortion, that deliberate distortion has to be removed when we demodulate our signal back at the receiver side. Only then we will be able to obtain the original signal. Okay, so there are two methods with the help of which we can demodulate our PAM signal for flat top sampling case. First is using equalizer, okay, and second is using holding circuit. So first let us talk about demodulation of PAM signal using equalizer. Fine. So yesterday also we had discussed one concept where we had seen the spectrum of the flat top pulse signal. Okay, spectrum means how does your signal look like in frequency domain. So first we will have a brief look again at that spectrum of your flat top PM signal, and then we will move to this discussion. So let us see. This is what we had seen in yesterday's class. So here in the figure A, we have impulse sampled PAM signal, impulse sampled modulating signal. And on the right hand side in figure B, this is the frequency spectrum of this impulse sample signal. Okay, and we had seen how to obtain this frequency spectrum when we talked about the representation of PM signal with the help of mathematical expression. So this is our original, you can say, uh, impulse sampled PM signal. Fine. Okay. So students, once we observe this impulse sampled PAM signal in frequency domain, then we had seen the single pulse, okay, of duration tau, and this was its representation in frequency domain. I told you that if we represent rectangular pulse in frequency domain, we get a kind of sync pulse. So that is that one. Okay, and then I told you that your flat top sampled PAM signal is actually the convolution of these two. Okay, and the convolution of these two in time domain, this gives us flat top PM signal. Okay, so when we have convolution in time domain, what we have multiplication in the frequency domain. You already know the convolution theorem of Fourier transform. So if we multiply these two signals, this is what we get. And now you can see here that because of this flat top pulse, okay, once we multiply these two, this was our original signal and this is our um, pulsed signal representation in frequency domain. If you multiply them, this is what you get, and you can see that there is a distortion. Okay, so we are multiplying FSW and PW, and you can call this PW as the distortion part, which is inherent in the flat top sampling that has been deliberately introduced. Okay, so this was our frequency domain representation. So your flat top PAM signal can be represented mathematically like this. That is FMW or FM omega is equal to FS omega into P omega. Fine. So with this background, now we again move to our previous slide. So students, this is what I have shown here, that the spectrum, output spectrum of flat top PAM signal, it is F omega multiplied with, F omega multiplied with P omega. Okay, so F omega is our original impulse sampled signal, and this was due to that pulse. Fine. Since it is in frequency domain, that's why it has been multiplied. So what is our objective now at the demodulator side? We want this original signal back, and we know that our baseband signal or the information signal lies at the lower end of the spectrum, or towards, you can say, lower frequencies. So obviously if we want to uh, obtain back F omega and we want to remove P omega part, then we will have to pass our PAM modulated signal through ideal low pass filter. Okay, so in fact, when we pass our signal through low pass filter, so what do we get? This is also we had seen in the previous class. See, in this Fs omega, we have the original signal, and there are harmonics of that signal. Fine. So when you pass your PAM signal, that is your Fs omega into P omega through low pass filter, then this original signal will be obtained, and these side lobes, or you can say harmonics part, will be removed. But this original signal is distorted due to P omega. Okay, so that's why while demodulating, what we want ideal low pass filter to retrieve our original signal back with some distortion, obviously, and then we need a block that can reverse the distortion that we have introduced. Okay, so that's why we use a block whose transfer function is 1 by P omega, and this is what we call as equalizer. Equalizer means which will equalize or which will remove the distortion that we have deliberately introduced. Okay, and that distortion will be removed by having a block which provides a reverse transfer function of the original distortion. So after passing our signal through low pass filter, if we use an equalizer having transfer function 1 by P omega, then mathematically what will happen? Your F omega P omega will be multiplied with 1 by P omega. And finally, what do we get? We get F omega, which is our nothing but the original information signal. And this is how we can obtain our PAM demodulated signal, or you can say the original information signal or the modulating signal. Okay, so equalizer is also a filter which is whose job is to equalize the effect that has been introduced due to distortion. Okay, so mathematically it is proved that we need to use reverse transfer function, and this frequency domain representation for our original modulating signal, this also we had seen in the previous class. After passing it through low pass filter, we'll get this plus distortion. Okay, distortion, and this distortion will be removed by reverse transfer function, or you can say equalizer, like this. I hope all of you have understood this PAM demodulation using equalizer. Now let us move to next circuit, which is called as holding circuit. So we obtain PAM demodulated signal by using holding circuit. Okay, the block diagram of holding circuit is shown on the left hand side of this slide. Okay, so whatever PAM signal we receive, we first passes through a holding circuit, and the output of the holding circuit is then passed through a low pass filter, and we finally get our demodulated signal back. So first let us see what is holding circuit. So holding circuit is nothing but it is a simple capacitor with a switch. Okay, and we know that what is the property of capacitor? Capacitor tries to hold the voltage signal. Okay, it doesn't allow the voltage to change significantly across it. We know that. So whatever value to which the capacitor has charged, capacitor tries to hold that. Okay, so how does it work here? For PM demodulation, what we do, we all know that in our PM signal we have different amplitude pulse train. Okay, so this is what we have. Fine. So this pulse is present here, 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 and we have some portion in between where there is no pulse. Fine. So what is the job of holding circuit? The holding circuit closes its switch at the beginning of the pulse. Whenever a pulse is uh, entering into our circuit, we close the switch. Okay, as soon as the switch is closed, obviously our capacitor will be charged to the amplitude of the pulse. Fine. And then what we do, when the pulse period ends, then we will open up the switch. Okay, when we open up the switch, obviously capacitor has charged itself to the amplitude of the pulse, and even though there is no pulse in between, switch is open, but the capacitor will hold the value of the amplitude of the pulse. Okay, that's why we call it as holding circuit. So what do we get? So this was the pulse for which our pulse exists. Okay, and this is the gap between the two pulses. During the gap, your capacitor or the holding circuit holds the value of voltage. Okay, then after that new pulse comes. So whenever new pulse comes, your capacitor charges to a new voltage value of the pulse. So your capacitor attains this value. Then during the gap period, your capacitor or holding circuit holds the value that it has obtained during your pulse. Okay, so this is how it keeps on holding the value of corresponding pulse during the gap period. Okay, and this is what we get at the output of holding circuit, like a staircase. Okay, so we get a staircase kind of signal at the output of holding circuit. I hope all of you have been able to understand this. It is very, very simple. Okay, and once we pass this staircase signal through low pass filter, then what will happen? We know low pass filter allows low frequencies to pass through, and it rejects high frequency. And whenever we have a square pulse kind of thing, there these edges these edges represent the high frequency components, and this top portion of the pulse represent low frequency counterpart. So these edges will be removed in a way, or you can say whatever discontinuity or whatever abruptness is there in our staircase, those will be removed when we pass our staircase signal through low pass filter. And the low pass filter will give us smoothened output, which is equivalent to our uh, original modulating signal. Okay, so first by using holding circuit and then by using low pass filter, we are able to get back our PAM signal, original signal. So this is how we demodulate our PAM signal for the flat top sampling case. I hope all of you have understood this. Fine. Next. So we just talked about the flat top sampled PAM demodulation. Okay, now we will talk about PM demodulation for the naturally sampled PM signal. Okay, so if you carefully observe naturally sampled PM signal, which has been shown on our left hand side of the slide, also, there the top of the pulses, it assumes 0 frequency. Okay, the shape of the modulating signal itself. Okay, so in case of naturally sampled your PAM signal, our modulating signal is present in the top of the pulses, the way we had our modulating signal present in the carrier in case of amplitude modulation. Okay, so there is no deliberate distortion present in naturally sampled PAM signal. So obviously, if we want our original modulating signal back, then we can easily see that our modulating signal is present on the top of the pulses. So obviously, if we use envelope detector, the circuit that we used for AM demodulation, same circuit will work here in naturally sampled PAM signal. So this is very, very simple one. So your PAM demodulation for naturally sampled PAM signal, it uses envelope detector. And we know what do we have in envelope detector? We have a diode, okay, and we have RC combination, which acts as, you can say, low pass filter. Okay, so this is our circuit of envelope detector, which detects the envelope of PAM pulses, okay, or PAM signal pulses. And how does it work? We can easily determine that because of diode, only the positive side signal will be allowed to pass through. Okay, so as the diode conducts, then your capacitor charges to the corresponding value of the top of the pulse. Okay, you can see here that your capacitor has charged here during the duration of the pulse where it is active. Okay, and then whenever there is gap between the two pulses, then your capacitor tries to discharge through this resistance. So the value held by the capacitor, it tries to decrease, fine, and then your next pulse comes, your capacitor again charges, and then capacitor discharges during your uh, gap between the pulses, then your capacitor again charges to the pulse top, and this way your things proceed further. So this signal we get at the output of our envelope detector. So once we have obtained such kind of thing at the output of envelope detector, now in order to get back original signal back, original modulating signal back, we want to remove these ripples, or we want to remove these distortions which are present in the original modulating signal. So here we will be using low pass filter. So here we have used a second order active low pass filter. See students, here we have used operational amplifier in the filter. That's why this filter is an active filter. Okay, and we have two RC combination circuit present at the input of operational amplifier. That's why it is called second order low pass filter. So this active low pass filter will remove ripples and those distortion in the modulating signal to a great extent. And once we pass it through this second order active low pass filter, we get a smooth curve which represents my original modulating signal. Okay, so this is how I demodulate the top of my naturally sampled PAM signal, and I get the demodulated signal back, which is nothing but my original modulating signal. So for natural sampled signal, PAM signal, I have to use envelope detection followed by low pass filter for its demodulation. Okay, so I hope all of you have understood this thing. So students, after we complete our discussion on PM demodulation, now we move to our next topic, that is pulse width modulation, that is your PWM. Okay, so the circuit for PWM is very interesting. I hope you will enjoy the working of PWM modulator circuit. Let us move forward. So I told you in the previous class also that what happens in pulse width modulation. Your pulse width modulation is a type of pulse time modulation, because in case of pulse width modulation, the width of the pulse is varied in accordance with the instantaneous value of the modulating signal, which has been represented by ft. Okay, so you can see here that this is our carrier in the form of pulse train. This is our modulating signal. And as the modulating signal value changes, the width of the pulse changes. You can see that first the pulse width has increased, then pulse width is decreasing, then pulse width is again increasing, depending on whether our modulating signal value is increasing or decreasing. So why do we keep this pulse width modulation under pulse time modulation category? Because your width is a parameter which is present in the time axis of your signal. So that's why we keep it under pulse time modulation category. So here the width of the pulse, it will change in accordance with your modulating signal. Okay, and I told you yesterday also that PWM is more noise immune as compared to PAM, because in PAM our information is present in the top of the pulses, which is easily affected by the noise, whereas in case of PWM our information is present in the width of the pulse. So that's why your width cannot be changed by your noise present in the channel. That's why this PWM signal is more noise immune. And as we discussed in yesterday's class also, that your pulse signal, its frequency will be decided by the sampling theorem. So same is the case here also. So your desired frequency of the clock signal we will apply, that will be determined by your sampling theorem. Okay, and the objective of sampling theorem I told you yesterday also, it is its objective is to reproduce our original signal back to the best extent possible. Fine. So your pulse width modulation or circuit or PWM modulator circuit, it uses a special IC that we call as timer IC, and its number is IC 555. So I maybe you have studied the working of this timer IC 555 in your previous semester classes, or maybe in the present semester classes also. Still, I'll try to cover the main concept of this IC 555 IC first, so that you are able to understand the generation of PWM using IC 555. So in PWM modulator circuit, your IC 555 timer IC will be operated in the monostable mode. I'll tell you what is the meaning of monostable mode. Okay, so before we move into the working of your IC 555 timer, we should know that what is the job of differentiator circuit in this PWM modulator circuit. Okay, so students, here for PWM modulator to work, we require triggering pulses. And what is the job of triggering pulses? The job of triggering pulses is to trigger, is to initiate something. Okay, so the PWM generation process will be triggered by, will be initiated by the triggering pulses. And these triggering pulses will be derived with the help of differentiator circuit. Okay, so students, you all know that we have used RC filter for our low pass filtering case. Okay, so this is your RC filter or RC circuit. This RC circuit, it works like a low pass filter. Okay, another name for this RC circuit is integrator. So if you observe this RC circuit mathematically, you will come to know that your output signal is integration of the input signal. That's why we also call it as integrator. And we know what happens when we integrate mathematically. So same thing applies to this RC circuit. But if we change the position of resistance and capacitance, if we make it like this, and if we obtain output across resistance, okay, this circuit will work as high pass circuit. Okay, means it will pass high frequencies, or you can say high pass filter. And this high pass filter, if you represent mathematically, it will be working as differentiator. Okay, so your output voltage is differentiation of the input voltage. That's why we call it as differentiator circuit. Okay, so these triggering pulses will be derived with the help of differentiator circuit, which is nothing but it looks like this. And the same circuit has been shown here. You have a capacitor here and you have a resistor here. And this output voltage is the differentiation of the input voltage. Fine. And now, since in case of our pulse modulated circuits, our input signal is what? It is a clock circuit. And what is clock circuit? Clock circuit is a train of square pulses. So these are our square pulses. Fine. So what happens if you differentiate these square signals, pulses? So I just told you that in case of our square pulses, or in case of our pulse, these edges represent high frequency component, and the top of the pulse represent the low frequency component. And since this is high pass filter, so it will allow edges to pass through and it will stop the top. Fine. In the low pass filter, our top was passed through and edges were stopped. Fine. So what will happen if edges are passed and your top is stopped? In that case, what will happen, that we'll get such kind of signal. Means for the positive going edge, you'll get an impulse like this, or capacitor will charge like this and it will discharge. Then when you have negative going pulse or edge of the pulse, for that capacitor will charge in the negative direction and it will again charge to zero value. Okay, so this is nothing but this is an edge of that pulse. This is another edge of that pulse. Fine. Similarly, it keeps on repeating itself like this. Okay, so this is how your edges have been extracted from the square wave input signal. Okay, so this is positive edge, this is negative edge, then positive, then negative, like this. I hope all of you have been understanding this. Okay, so these are known as triggering pulses. Fine. And if you reduce your time constant, then you can give it a shape of almost impulse. So if this time will reduce, then you will get very sharp edged pulses like this, okay, which resembles impulses. Fine. So I hope all of you followed the working of differentiator circuit, and you also followed the generation of triggering pulses. Next. This is your IC 555 timer. Okay, so your IC looks like this. It is an 8-pin IC, okay, which is named as 555. So pin number 1 is ground, pin number 2 is trigger, pin number 3 is output, 4 is reset, then pin number 5 is control voltage, pin number 6 is threshold, pin number 7 is discharge, and pin number 8 is your power supply pin. Okay, so this is the package, IC package. How does it look like from outside? Okay, and this diagram is the internal diagram of IC 555. Okay, and we need to understand that what is there in this 555 timer IC. Fine. So before we move into the working of this 555 timer IC, I need to explain one more concept. I told you here that this IC 555 timer IC for PWM will be working in monostable mode. Okay, so this IC 555, it can work in 3 modes. It can work in astable mode, it can work in monostable mode, and it can work in bistable mode. For PWM, we will operate it as monostable mode. So first we must know what is the meaning of astable, what is the meaning of bistable, what is the meaning of monostable. Okay, so astable means which is unstable. Okay, so we also call these as multi-vibrator circuit. So we call it as astable multi-vibrator, monostable multi-vibrator, bistable multi-vibrator. Okay, so when we have to generate square wave, with the help of this IC555, we operate it as a stable multivibrator. Means it has two states, and both those states are astable. Just a minute. So in case of astable, your square pulses or your clock signals or clock frequencies are generated like this. So if your astable multivibrator operates properly, or if your IC555 work in astable mode, this is what we get. It has both states, high and low, which are unstable. Means it has high state for some time, then it switches to low state, then again switches to high state, then again switches to low state. Both states are unstable, and your circuit keeps on shifting from one state to another state, second state to first state, and so on. This is a stable multivibrator. And in case of your monostable multivibrator, what happens? It has one stable state and another is unstable state. So what will happen, that in monostable multivibrator, there is one stable state. Let me represent it here. Say my low state is the stable state. So my circuit will remain in the low state continuously, which is the stable state. Then as soon as trigger pulse comes, my circuit will switch to unstable state, which is high state, or switches from low state to high state. Okay, it will remain in this state for some time. Okay, some amount of time, say tau, and it will again revert back to the stable state, and it will remain in the stable state from then onwards. Okay, so it remains in unstable state for some specified duration of time, and other state is the stable state. So this L is its stable state. It remains in that. When we trigger, it switches from stable state to unstable state. It remains in unstable state for a specified duration of time, and then it again switches back to its stable state. This is called monostable multivibrator. Okay, and in case of bistable, it has both states stable. Means it remains in low state. Fine, it will remain in low state as long as there is no trigger pulse. When there is trigger pulse, it shifts to high state or another state from low to high. Then it will remain in high state as long as it doesn't get any further triggering pulse. Okay, and then when triggering pulse comes, it will again switches to low, and then it will remain in low as long as that pulse. Means it will not automatically switch from low to high or high to low. Fine. So in case of unstable state, your switches back after specified duration, and in stable state, it continues on remaining in unstable state till we get some triggering pulse. So this is how our three multivibrators, your astable, monostable, and bistable multivibrator operate. So for the case of PWM signal generation, we will operate our timer IC555 in the monostable mode. So now let us see how does our IC555 work, and it gives us monostable mode. So for monostable, I told you that, say my stable state is low, then as soon as triggering pulse comes, it moves to your unstable state. It will remain in unstable state for some time, and then it again goes back to its stable state. So this portion represents our unstable state. Okay, so let us see. In case of IC555, what we have two comparators, and we know what is the job of comparator. The job of the comparator is to compare two input signals. So this comparator has, one is positive input, another is negative input. Okay, so if a signal on positive is higher than signal on negative, then it will give positive output or positive value, constant value. Okay, and if negative is high and positive is low, then it will give corresponding another state output, say negative. So in a way, your comparator compares the two input signals and tells us which one is greater. Okay. So here in this IC 555 timer, we have three internal resistances inbuilt. And you can see that VCC has been connected across these three resistances, and these three resistances are equal. And here we have ground. So it means across this resistance, we have voltage which is present is 1 by 3 VCC. Okay. By applying voltage divider rule, the voltage across this second resistance is 2 by 3 VCC, 2/3 of VCC. Okay. So this is what we have present here. So across one terminal of these comparator, in one comparator we have voltage is 2 by 3 VCC, in another comparator we have voltage 1 by 3 VCC. Okay. Now the second terminal of the lower comparator is the trigger one. Okay. So here we will apply those trigger pulses. Fine. So this comparator will compare the voltage between trigger pulse and this 1 by 3 VCC. Fine. Now let us move to second comparator. Second comparator will compare the voltage 2 by 3 VCC along with this threshold voltage. Okay, this is second terminal. Fine. So it will compare the voltages here. Apart from that, in the second comparator, we have one more terminal that we call as control voltage. Okay, so this control voltage is connected across 2 by 3 VCC, and we can override this 2 by 3 VCC with the help of control voltage. So your second comparator will compare the threshold voltage and the control voltage along with 2 by 3 VCC. Okay, so I hope all of you have understood this. Then the output of these two comparators are given to one SR flip-flop. Okay, and this SR flip-flop will be set and reset depending on the voltage conditions here. Fine. Then the output of this SR flip-flop Q bar is connected to the output block, which gives us finally out of this IC 555 timer IC. Then it is also connected to a transistor that we call as discharge transistor. Okay, so the job of discharge transistor is that whenever we will turn on this discharge transistor, fine, then whatever voltage is applied across discharge transistor, that will go to ground. Okay, so this transistor will be turned on or off depending on the state of the flip-flop. I hope all of you have been able to understand this. Okay. So students, here we have discussed the internal diagram of our timer IC, that is IC 555. Now we see some more details that how does this 555 timer IC works in monostable mode. I told you na that IC 555 it has to be operated in monostable mode to work as PWM modulator. So I'll move to PWM modulator circuit in the next slide. But before that, I want to explain you the working of IC 555 as monostable mode. Okay, so the circuit which has been shown on the right of this slide, this is your IC 555 timer in monostable mode. So let us see what changes have been made to this internal diagram of IC 555 so that it works in monostable mode. So this is our 555 timer IC. So I told you that we have trigger pulses which are applied to terminal number 2. So you can see we are applying trigger pulses to 2, and let me tell you that the trigger pulses that will be applying to uh, terminal number 2, they will be negative trigger pulses. Okay, so we will initiate our uh, working of the circuit at the negative going edge of this one. Okay, so we will this is no trigger pulse. The trigger pulse has been generated separately as I showed you in the previous slide. So your circuit will be triggered at the negative going pulse, not at this positive going pulse. Fine. That is one point. Another point you can see here that I told you that in the comparator, one terminal voltage is fixed. This was 2 by 3 VCC. This is 1 by 3 VCC. It is not shown out. Okay. So only trigger was there. So for this lower comparator, this trigger pulse has been applied, and the another input is 1 by 3 VCC. Your trigger pulses are compared with respect to 1 by 3 VCC. So this is what we have discussed. Now let us come to second comparator. In the second comparator, we have one terminal inside that is giving us the comparator voltage 2 by 3 VCC. Another is threshold. So you see, this is our threshold terminal. Okay. So this threshold terminal is connected across this capacitor C. Okay. Means the voltage which will appear across this capacitor, that voltage will go as threshold voltage here, and this threshold voltage will be compared with 2 by 3 VCC. Fine. That is another point. Okay. Then our VCC is at terminal number 8. So this is our VCC. So VCC has been connected here. Fine. And in the your reset is to reset our IC. So this is active low. So in order to disable this, we have connected it to VCC. That is also done. Our output is obtained from terminal number 3. So this is our terminal number 3 from where output has been obtained. Then I told you that in the upper comparator, the 2 by 3 VCC voltage can be overridden by control voltage. Okay, so here we have not shown control voltage to be applied. So that's why your control voltage has been made 0. Means in the comparator, your threshold voltage will be only compared with 2 by 3 VCC in this circuit. Fine. Okay. So this is your control voltage. Then discharge capacitor, sorry, discharge transistor. So that discharge transistor was connected at your terminal number 7. So this is discharge 1, and you can see here that your discharge transistor is discharging through this RC circuit. Fine. So it is discharging through this. Okay. Sorry, I made a wrong statement in a way. Your the voltage across 7 terminal will discharge to the ground through this discharge transistor. Okay. So what will happen? Whatever voltage has come across capacitor, it will discharge through this discharge there. Fine. So this is how your connections are made. Now let us see it's working. So what will happen? We will apply the trigger pulse. Okay, this is the trigger pulse. As soon as the value of the trigger pulse goes below 1 by 3 VCC, see, this is 1 by 3 VCC. If it is if goes below 1 by 3 VCC, then what will happen? Then in that case, this negative terminal voltage will be lesser than 1 by 3 VCC. Okay, fine. So your trigger voltage will be less than 1 by 3 VCC. Fine. So comparator detects that. Okay. And then what will happen? This flip-flop S will be 1. So this flip-flop will become then set. Okay. So this flip-flop is set, means Q will be 1 and Q bar will be 0. Okay. And because of this, your output will become 1. Because of, as soon as your trigger pulse goes below 1 by 3 VCC, your stable state of the output was 0 earlier. So as soon as this trigger pulse goes 1 by 3 VCC, your output state will change from 0 to 1. Okay. So apart from that, since it is 0, it is also going to discharge transistor. So discharge transistor becomes off. So if this becomes off, it means the discharge path of the capacitor, it also turns off, means there is no possibility of capacitor getting discharged. So this path is broken. Okay. So if this is broken, then you can say that here we have VCC. So as soon as this happens, this capacitor starts charging through VCC. Fine. So the capacitor starts charging as soon as your trigger pulse goes below 1/3 VCC. See here, it starts discharging. Okay, fine. So then the voltage across the capacitor, since capacitor is increasing, voltage across capacitor is increasing, fine. So this voltage starts increasing, and the voltage across capacitor, it is being compared. See, the voltage across the capacitor, it is connected across threshold terminal 6. It means the voltage which is increasing through capacitor, it is being applied to this terminal. Okay, and another terminal of the comparator is 2/3 VCC. It means this threshold voltage, which is nothing but the voltage across capacitor, is compared by 2/3 VCC. So your capacitor starts charging and it charges up to 2/3 VCC. Okay, as soon as the voltage across the capacitor or the voltage across this threshold terminal, it increases beyond 2/3 VCC. In that case, this comparator works. Okay, this comparator becomes high. Okay, in that case, the flip-flop changes its states. Your Q becomes 0 and Q bar becomes 1. As soon as your capacitor voltage increases 2/3 VCC, and your output, it again switches back to its state from 1 to 0. Okay, so your output becomes 0. It has again returned back to its original state. And when this becomes 1, then this discharge transistor, it is turned on. And when this is turned on, then this capacitor, it discharges through this discharge transistor. Okay, then this path is restored, and whatever voltage was accumulated across the capacitor, it has now discharged through your discharge transistor. So you can see that your output, this output will remain high as long as your capacitor is charging, and capacitor is charging for a limited amount of time. So for limited amount of time, your output remains high. And once capacitor has charged and its value exceeded 2/3 VCC, it again switches back to its original state, and output also becomes 0. And it remains in this 0 state continuously till the next trigger pulse comes. Okay, so now here you can see that this width of this pulse, which has been generated at the output, this width of the pulse is dependent on the time for which your capacitor is charging. Okay, so this way, by varying this capacitor charging time, you can change the width of the pulse. Okay, so here I have simply explained the working of 555 timer IC as monostable multivibrator, where this is my unstable state and this is my stable state. Okay, so this is how we have learned the operation of 555 timer IC as monostable multivibrator. Now the same circuit I'll modify a bit, and we will understand that how this monostable multivibrator circuit works as PWM modulator. Fine. So now that PWM modulator circuit will not take much time, just minor changes, and we will be able to understand our 555 timer IC as PWM modulator. Fine. So students, this is how we have studied the working of 555 timer IC as monostable multivibrator. Now we see the specific circuit that will give us PWM waveform, and that is also working as your monostable multivibrator. So there is a small change in the circuit. So the circuit of PWM modulator is shown on the left hand side of your slide. So as I told you earlier also, we will be generating negative trigger pulses. Okay, so these negative trigger pulses have been generated with the help of diode. So we have a diode here, okay, which will allow the pulses to pass through only in one direction, which is negative here. Your positive direction pulses, they will be removed, okay. And I told you that the differentiator circuit will give us the trigger pulses. So the combination of diode and R1C1, which works as a differentiator, provides us negative trigger pulses. So you can see here the pulses are generated from the clock signal, okay. And from that clock signal we generate negative trigger pulses, okay, by using differentiator and diode. So this portion generates your negative trigger pulses, fine. And I told you that these trigger pulses, they will decide the starting of the PWM pulses. Your monostable multivibrator will start work when trigger pulses arrive. So obviously when trigger pulses arrive, our beginning of the PWM pulse will exist. So you can see here that here our trigger pulse is arriving. We will be generating negative trigger pulses from the negative going edge, okay. And from this our pulse width is starting, okay, or this is the starting of PWM pulses, fine. So another change that has been done in this circuit is that you see that our threshold terminal here, that is your terminal number 6, this threshold terminal is connected across R2 and C2, okay. So means the voltage which is compared in the comparator, one of those voltages is provided by this capacitor C2, okay. And in the comparator to which this threshold voltage is connected, another terminal was having the voltage 2 by 3 VCC, okay. And apart from 2 by 3 VCC, we had one more overriding terminal, and that was control voltage terminal number 5. And in the previous diagram, we had connected that terminal to the ground through a capacitor, whereas here this terminal 5 is connected to the modulating signal, okay. Now what does it mean? It means that the comparator, the second comparator, let me show you the previous slide once again. This comparator, it compares the threshold voltage, okay, and the control voltage. This is 2 by 3 VCC, which is inbuilt, and this control voltage is overriding this 2 by 3 VCC, okay. So indirectly what I want to say, that we are comparing the threshold voltage and the control voltage instead of 2 by 3 VCC. So what is happening here? We are comparing the modulating signal voltage and the threshold voltage, which is generated through your R2C2 capacitor combination, okay. So obviously in PWM, what we want that the width of the pulse, this width of the pulse must be in accordance with our modulating signal value. So obviously we will have to generate the width of the pulse in such a way that the capacitor is charged for the duration which is proportional to the value of the modulating signal. That's why your capacitor is being charged for the duration, or it is being charged to such voltage value that is equivalent to our modulating signal value. Only then we will be able to obtain pulse width modulation. So that is one change that we have seen in the previous diagram. So that way your end of PWM pulse, the end of PWM pulse means this one, this end will be depending on your R2C2 combination, okay, and the modulating signal on pin 5. Only then we will be able to get your PWM. I hope all of you have understood this. Let me explain it one more time in further detail. See, what is happening? We are generating trigger pulses. These trigger pulses are going to this terminal, terminal number 2. Okay. As soon as your trigger pulse voltage goes below 1/3 VCC, okay, I told you that your discharge transistor, it will be turned off. Fine. And your output terminal, PWM output terminal, it will give you what? It will give you high. So we get high. Okay, as soon as this output becomes high, means it has entered into unstable state, your capacitor will start charging. So here, which capacitor will start charging? This C2 capacitor will start charging. This 7 is obviously discharge terminal, which is turned off, and your capacitor will start charging through R2. Okay, now capacitor will charge up to what point? So this capacitor will charge, okay, it will keep on charging, it will keep on charging like this. Okay, now this capacitor will charge. In the earlier discussion, it was to charge up to 2/3 VCC, but here this 2/3 VCC has been overridden by the control voltage terminal, that is modulating signal. It means the capacitor will charge up to modulating signal voltage value, that is VM. As soon as the voltage across this C2, which has been applied to threshold voltage, as soon as this capacitor value becomes equal to or just greater than your modulating signal value, your output will change its states. Means it will remain high for the duration when your capacitor value obtains value equivalent to modulating signal. Okay, so as soon as this become equal to modulating signal, capacitor charges, your output remains high, and we get the corresponding pulse width. So this pulse width is now proportional to the modulating signal value, which is instantaneous at that particular instance. Okay, so this pulse width is proportional to the instantaneous value of the modulating signal, and so on. Is that point clear? So this is how your PWM pulses are generated, and we are able to generate PWM signal with the help of 555 timer IC, which works in a monostable mode. So that's all about your PWM modulator using 555 timer IC. So we stop here and we will continue with PWM in the next class.